Tom Cotton. He joins us. Senator, we'll ask you about the coronavirus bill coming up in a moment. But first, you know, today is the first day after Labor Day, historically when the big presidential campaign starts. It's interesting. There's a USA Today poll out that says more people expect the president to win the debates than Joe Biden. Independents think that President Trump will win by a margin of 10 points. The debates are 3 weeks from today. Why do you think people think that the president's going to come out on top?
Hey, Steve, it's good to be on with y'all. Well, I think they believe the president will win because President Trump has a strong record of accomplishment for the American people. Just look where we stand now, 6 months after this pandemic was unleashed on the world by China. We just had another great jobs report. 1.4 million new jobs were created. We're not back to where we were in the strongest economy in my lifetime, but we have beaten the expectation of almost every prediction, in part because Congress, along with the president, passed legislation back in the spring that helped families and businesses survive the peak of this pandemic, but also because the president has led a smart, safe reopening. As more states begin to reopen their businesses, I think we're going to see more economic growth, more jobs, whereas Joe Biden would put the country back in lockdown. Or just look at what the president said yesterday about China. American people know that Joe Biden has been soft on China for 50 years. He led the charge to give them most favored nation status or admit them to the World Trade Organization. He said that we should celebrate China's rise. President Trump, by contrast, has cracked down on China and is making them pay for decades of stealing our jobs, our factories, our property, and now unleashing this plague on the world.
Well, I'm so glad you brought up China. It sets up this next soundbite. This is the president talking about China. Listen.
Biden wins. China will own this country, and hopefully you're not going to be able to find that out. It's the most important election in our history right now. Under my administration, we will make America into the manufacturing superpower of the world, and we'll end our reliance on China once and for all. We're going to end our reliance on China because we can't rely on China. And I don't want them building a military like they're building right now. Now you can understand why China would much rather see Sleepy Joe than Donald Trump. But as long as I'm president, we will never waver in our undying loyalty to the American worker and to our country as a whole.
Senator, why is it that he's saying that he thinks China would rather have Joe Biden in office?
Well, our intelligence community has said that China prefers Joe Biden to Donald Trump, and it's pretty clear why. Joe Biden has been soft on China for 47 years in public life, whereas President Trump has cracked down on them. I mean, in the middle of this campaign, not 20 years ago, but in the middle of this campaign, Joe Biden says that China is not our competition and they're not bad folks. That's kind of similar to when he would travel to China over and over again to toast Xi Jinping and celebrate China's rise, whereas President Trump has imposed tariffs on China for taking our property and for not trading fairly with the United States. He has now begun to take action to make them pay for unleashing this pandemic on the world. It's no surprise that China would rather deal with Joe Biden, who embodies the failed consensus in Washington for 30 years since the end of the Cold War, that China would somehow become a mature, responsible country as opposed to the pariah state they have become.
Yeah, Senator Tom Cotton, the first one, I believe, in the country to say we have to stop flights from China. The respect the president has for you, I think, led to his decision. Just keep in mind, Joe Biden is now tough on China. But when he has free trade agreements there, when he plays basketball with the president, President Xi, he has no problem letting manufacturing go there. But then he sees the polls. 73% of Americans look at China in an unfavorable way. Now he's against China. Then when manufacturing, let's bring it back home. Now he's going to do that. But where was he when he was pushing the TPP and all the international trade agreements? I don't know if he can successfully change on a dime. Meanwhile, a place the vice president used to work, former vice president, is the Senate. You guys go back to work today, and the president is not optimistic of any type of rescue deal, the latest one. What about you, Senator? Do you see any give?
Brian, it'll really depend whether the Democrats drop their unreasonable and outlandish demands. You know, back in the spring, when we knew so little about this virus, how it would impact our health and our economy, we passed $3 trillion in relief spending to help families and businesses get through the worst of the pandemic. The Democrats now, even with all we know, even with cases declining, even with the economy reopening, even with record jobs reports for 4 straight months, want another $3 trillion. They want a blank check to fund their long-standing wish list. That's not what we should do. We should have a relief bill that is targeted and calibrated to those who need it most. In industries that still are very hard hit, like the travel industry or the hospitality industry. We should help those families that are still out of work, maybe because their state hasn't lifted their lockdown orders. We should help schools reopen or stay open in a safe and responsible fashion. We shouldn't just give Nancy Pelosi $3 trillion.
But how do you target that type of money, Senator?
Wishes.
How do you target that type of money? Everything you said is right, but it's hard to get from D.C. fanning across the country while not backing up these programs.
Well, that is right, because the Democrats are unwilling to target the money right now. What we want to do is to target it, is to give it a more pinpoint accuracy to the places of greatest need for our families, our businesses, and our communities. In the end, the Democrats are also holding out for their holy grail, which is a no-strings-attached, unconditional bailout for states and cities that have long-standing, decades-old fiscal management problems. And obviously, we're not going to do that.
And that is what the president has said. He said those states and cities have been run by Democrats for decades, and he's not going to bail them out using this particular crisis. Meanwhile, the North Portico is where the president held an impromptu press conference yesterday. In addition to talking about China, Senator, he was also talking about the New York Times 1619 project. He does not want to see that used in America's schools. Here's POTUS.
I want everybody to know everything they can about our history. I'm not a believer in cancel culture, the good or the bad. If you don't study the bad, it could happen again. So I do want that subject studied very, very carefully and very accurately. But we grew up with certain history, and now they're trying to change our history, revisionist history. That's why they want to take down our monuments. That's why they want to take down our statues. Washington Monument, they want to rename it. The D.C. committee, but the D.C. committee is all Democrats. Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson. I mean, we're talking about, this is the big stuff now. No, we don't do that. Never going to happen with me, I guarantee you that.
So, Senator, how big is cancel culture going to be on the list of things people are thinking about on November the 3rd?
I think a lot of Americans are worried about it. They're worried about it for their kids getting indoctrinated at our schools through the kind of anti-American historical revisionism of the New York Times 1619 project. They're worried about their ability to speak their mind freely, whether it's at work or in their community, for fear that they'll be targeted by, online mobs or targeted by their bosses who want to avoid controversy in the workplace. The president is right that we're a country that's built on the equality of all mankind, which leads directly into the rights to speak freely, to associate politically, to worship God as you choose. And we should not allow left-wing mobs, whether they're in the streets or whether they're on social media, to silence those voices. People should be able to lead their life, worship their God, speak their mind, teach their kids that America is a great country, and to do so in accordance with their values and their principles.
Senator, thanks so much for being on with us this morning.
Thank you all.